For instance, if I had a Beeline mobile phone, which I do have actually, but I don't need to pay it because it's a company one, I can actually put the number in there and then just pay it from here, just feed money in and it would pay my bills, which is, there are more of those around the place than there are of, that's not a very nice smell. No, why not? What's causing it? Maybe a dog shit somewhere, but because that's what it smells like. Hope it wasn't that guy that just walked past me. But there's more of those prion platigé machines than there is of somebody holding a glass out to me. They must think I need a drink or something. Then there are actually machines for getting the money out of the bank. There's Starbucks coffee, with Starbucks obviously in Russian letters. So it's obviously Subway that do something like that as well. You can see them in both sets of letters on Subway. Subway. There's an actual bank machine. Pivnoy podvalchik, beer cellar, small beer cellar. Chlebные истории is a baker's shop by the looks of things, but with a place you can sit down and do things. Somebody waving their arms around explaining something. And the other thing I wanted to mention, I think I may have mentioned it already, but the number of white cars here. Have a look and see how many of the cars in Krasnodar are white. When I mentioned it to the people here, they thought, well, they kind of don't notice it because they don't realise that how many white cars they've got. But as you can see, there's white car after white car. They're not all white on the night, as Barry Wattsett said, but they are certainly a large preponderance of them seem to be white. And there you go, there's another one. Some of them are silver. Those are the two colours that they do like more of than you'll see other places. The silver colour they do a lot in, and white. And if you take those two together, those two colours together, that makes up about half the cars they've got. And this apparently because it doesn't heat up so much. It reflects the heat off you a bit better. That's what they said. And then they say that the best of all is silver because that's the one which the dust doesn't show up on a silver car and you don't have to wash it more than once every few months. Whereas white, it does a little bit. And black is actually a car where dust shows up a lot because the dust is obviously light. They're saying that the dust is quite light here, so it shows up more in a darker car, and that seems to be the case. So yeah, in England you tend to get people saying, oh, I wouldn't have a white car, it'll get dirty very quickly, but apparently that's not really the case. So there we are. Oh, there's Darth Vader in this Yakitoria restaurant. They've got a Darth Vader costume there. I am your father. So I actually quite fancy some Japanese, and I need to eat at some point, so I think I'll go in here for the time being. I've eaten Russian and local quite a few nights, so I'll change and go for this, I think. Okay, so I came out of Yakitori a little while later. In the meantime, they've managed to get the jolly lights up working. So that's interesting to walk along here a little bit further away from the hotel. Get a bit of a Charlie Chaplin's restaurant. Chaplin, it's even called Chaplin. 2.4 on the thing now. For so many days now I've barely walked normally the way that I would normally want to walk, like 7 or 8 kilometres. It's also not like it's happened tonight. Spent some time in that place. Got into a discussion on Facebook in one of the groups, and then that's a bit of a time consuming thing, but it does relax me, which is important. Now I feel like I'm really ready to go to sleep, and so there's no need to stay up remarkably late now. In the meantime, and just basically show you what the sort of cafe society looks like, walking down this ulica Krasnodar with the lights up. Obviously it's nowhere near Christmas time. Возьмите воздуха сколько нужно. It says they take as much air as you need. It's nice. In the future they might take that seriously though, and people might start charging for air. That's one thing my grandfather, my father's father, Albina Sarkassians. What he used to say is that they'd charge you to breathe if they could, and I first heard him say that probably, well, when I was about 10 years of age, I suppose I heard him say it. So that's 40 years ago. 40 years later, we're still managing to breathe without being particularly charged for it. But seriously, we're more than halfway there, I think, to having his words come true. Certainly more and more things that you might expect to be free, somebody's trying to carve them up and sell them back to you. Even the human genome people started to try to turn that into a piece of IP, which would theoretically give them the right to own it. So you can have your genome owned by somebody, just in the way in which very wicked companies like Monsanto and what have you call the genome of some of these genetically modified plants their property, and then they put it on their balance sheet. Izumrud, emerald. Izumrud. If you want to know some Russian words. Rivgosh, that's just a French word written in Cyrillics. So, but is that any different really to what people like Zondervan do with their awful New International Version of the Bible? I don't know, probably I'll tread on some people's feet. Some people that really ought to know better, evangelicals and people like that, they use this New International Version, which again is genetically modified. It's not just translated, it's genetically modified, it's paraphrased. And then of course you can simply say, well, that's my intellectual property, and Zondervan have got the New International Version on their balance sheet as their intellectual property, and they can say whether you can quote it or not. You have to get permission from them. So, you know, my view on that is either something's the word of God, in which case I can freely quote it, or it's an article on somebody's balance sheet, somebody's intellectual property, in which case they've basically stolen it off God, made it their own property under false pretenses. They're thieves from the things which are most holy. They're like people that robbed things out of the temple in Old Testament era. There's nothing really, punishment really enough for them really, quite apart from everything else that they have made this awful paraphrase, this dangerous paraphrase in the first place. Not only that, but also on top of that, they expect you to respect it as their intellectual property. I don't have words to express my annoyance at the way that they've done it, and so many people who really should know better going along with it, choosing that, even reading it from the pulpit. When I hear that being read out of a pulpit, I feel disgust. It's not a proper Bible, it's a paraphrase. If you compare it line by line with something like the King James Version or the New King James Version or quite a few other versions which are much more respectful, although they may not have the same evangelical seal of approval that the NIV has, you'll see how much of a liberty they take again and again with the text. Who gave them the right to do that? Certainly not God. So if you're a NIV user, just take a while out to actually compare to the original text, the Greek, especially the New Testament, to compare, and you'll see they basically put their own guesses above the text and their own ideas about what it means above the text. So you're not following the word of God, you're just following the appearance of what some human minds have placed their own big ideas on it. And that's the equivalent of literature of what these Monsanto groups and what have you are trying to do with the genome. I think it's blasphemous, basically. Zondervan and Monsanto, but both together they're doing the same thing, but in just different areas of what God's revealed to us and what God's given and made for us.